I forgot to hit record, so let me start over. Good morning. My name is Regina Harris. I work for the North Texas Small Business Development Center. We are the administrative office for the Dallas Metropolitan Small Business Development Center. We're the ones that decided to put on this webinar regarding cybersecurity. We found that this would be helpful information for you pertaining to your small business. I went ahead and put our links in the chat. If for whatever reason you need to get in contact with us, please feel free to go ahead and contact us. I'm going to also put in our email address that will give you direct access to us if you're needing help with your small business. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming, Mr. Gregory James. He's the one that's going to facilitate this webinar today. We're also asking if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and either put them in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question directly. So let me go ahead and give you a little introduction about Mr. James. Gregory M. James is the CEO of Federal Procurement Data Reports, Inc. FPDR conducts research on government procurement. Mr. James retired as a research scientist, director, and principal investigator for the Cross Timbers at University of Texas at Arlington Office of Research. His areas of expertise include government procurement analysis, government contracting procedures, marketing research, capability statements, RFP review, cybersecurity compliance, and other items as needed. Mr. James graduated from Jessup Prep School, El Central College, and Central Methodist University Cox School of Business. So let's give a warm welcome to Mr. James.
Good. Well, thank you, Regina. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with the group today. We're going to discuss a relatively complex subject, and it's a subject that is very important to the national security of the United States, and it's also being driven by the Department of Defense, and we do anticipate that the rest of the federal agencies will have this cybersecurity compliance in their agencies shortly. We're kind of waiting for the last part of this to be what's called CMMC, and so we're waiting to make sure that that portion of the cybersecurity compliance is now, it will be a FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, which then will allow every federal agency to do it. So what we're doing, what we're talking about, something today, is something that will be important in federal contracting. And we just want to go over kind of the highlights and do a deep dive in some of the critical areas so that you will have an understanding of what's needed to be in compliance. So here's the agenda. One, we want to talk about current acquisition regulations and any notes that we have. Second thing, we want to talk about what are the compliance steps. And the third thing is that we want to talk about the cybersecurity maturation model certification. So guys, basically what this does or says is that you receive certain types of information from the federal government, from a federal agency. And we'll talk about the classification of that information. But the majority of the information that you will receive, especially prior to a contract award, they want you to protect it. And that's why we have these compliance steps to discuss. So once you do the compliance factors or steps that are required, then your company then will receive, you'll post your scores, and so that contracting officers can look at how well you are individually as a business compliant with the steps. And then contracting officers will then determine if they want to, and we'll see this more at the award stage, and we'll also see this by reference in all of the solicitations, especially coming out of the Department of Defense. So you'll do the compliance, you'll have a score, that score will be posted on a federal website. Then basically at some point when the CMMC model is approved and becomes part of the federal law, then depending on where you are in the food chain, size of contract and so on, you'll have an auditor that will come in to physically review your compliance. And then after that review, the auditor will then assign 3 levels of security compliance. And so let's say if you're level 1, then you'll only be able to bid on those contracts, those solicitations that the contracting officer has assigned the compliance level 2. Same thing, yeah. So just I don't know exactly when that's going to occur. Right now, the regulations are that you follow the steps that we'll cover in number 2. So, and as I said, this will be relatively detailed. So if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to ask them. Okay, so number 1, current federal acquisition regulation notes. What I have noticed over the last 6 months, and have been preparing for this introduction to cybersecurity since 2017, when the first rules came out. And a lot of my clients didn't really care much about it. They didn't know what it was. They were busy doing their job. And then all of a sudden, here's another set of regulations that the client, that DOD especially was requiring. So it's a necessary evil, or not evil, but it's a necessary expense that you'll have to go through to get the compliance. Now, current regulations, so see clauses incorporated by reference. So when you see a bid on sam.gov, you want to bid on, you want to immediately go to the PDF document and go to that section where they list all the different clauses that they expect you, federal regs, that they expect you to comply, to know about and or comply. And if you see 252.204-7012, then you know that you've got to be in a situation where you're in compliance. So as you look at these solicitations that come out from the Fed, from sam.gov, in particular the Department of Defense at this point, immediately look for this reference. And if you do see this regulation 252, then you know that the cybersecurity regs cover that solicitation. The other one, and then below that, we have the 252.204.7012, NIST 800-171. So as you'll see, probably in the next slide, there's different steps that you, or in the next few slides, you'll see different steps that you have to take. And this particular FAR reference says that, you know, you have to do a self-assessment of your own system. So, all right, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here's some notes: federal acquisition regulations and defense FAR supplement. Types of unclassified information. Okay, so what we're dealing with here is unclassified information, and this regulation divides the information you get from an agency into three categories. The first one is federal contract information, FCI. FCI is information not intended for public release that is provided by or generated to for the government to a contractor to develop or deliver products or services of government, but not including information provided by the government. I know some of this, if any of you have been involved in government contracting, especially federal, you know, there's a lot of E's, there's a lot of things that do, but federal contract information, basically what that means, if you get a bid, if you see a bid on SAM.gov, more than likely it's covered under federal contract information, FCI. The next one is controlled unclassified information. CUI is information the government creates or possesses, or that an entity creates or possesses for on behalf of the government. So if you get, you get a contract and they want you to produce certain things, it will be covered if that regulation is listed, as we talked about in the previous slide. It'd be considered controlled unclassified information. The last category of information coming out of SAM would be controlled technical information. CTI means technical information with military or space applications that is subject to control or access. Let's say in this category, you are a manufacturer and you make parts. If you're making parts for a weapons system, then there's going to be technical information that DOD, especially the Defense Logistics Agency, will give you plans. Well, those plans are considered controlled technical information. Also, if you're in construction, it would be considered controlled technical information once you receive or you're able to look at the plans. So, and I have references at the bottom that you can look to. So, three types of information that's covered under cybersecurity. You have federal contract information, you have controlled unclassified information, and then you have controlled technical information. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Contractual remedies to ensure compliance with DFAR clause 252204. So this clause requires a contractor to implement at minimum the NIST 800-171 security requirements. Okay. Failure to have or to make progress in a plan to implement requirements may be considered a material breach of contract. They're looking at this really seriously. Remedies for such breach may include withholding progress payments, foregoing remaining contract options, and potentially terminating the contract in part or whole. And then the last thing we talk about is False Claims Act. So the False Claims Act is a federal statute that came into play in 1863 in response to defense contractors defrauding the government during the Civil War. So this is very serious business, and it should be. And what I've noticed that it is requiring companies to decide if they want to bid on Department of Defense contracts at this point. And as I said earlier, later in the year, you'll probably see all government federal contracts with this requirement. So it's a cost of doing business. So you have to decide, is it worthwhile for you to comply with this prior to or in pursuit of a federal contract? So just wanted to make sure everybody kind of understood what the parameters were here. Okay, I think I might have, let's see if I might have gone over. Okay, we've got that. All right, good. All right, the next one. So the cybersecurity compliance covers what we call families of control. The first control is access control. And here there's 22 sections that deal with access. But bottom line, if you have a network or a computer system, how often and there's multiple people using that computer system, how often do you change the passwords? You know, what happens when somebody leaves? What do you do with that? How do you get them out of your system as quickly as possible? So the Fed wants you to address and there's 22 sections about access control. Now, what's pretty particular about these families of control, when you take the questionnaire, self-assessment questionnaire, it's yes, no, maybe, working on it kind of answers. They are all divided into these different sections. The next one is awareness and training, audit and accountability, identification and authentication. You know, how do you identify somebody that wants to get into your network? Incident response. If you feel like that your computer system has been hacked, then you have the responsibility to notify your contracting officer that you've been hacked. And these are the things we think they took or looked at. And then the contracting officer is going to want to know, okay, what are you doing to make sure that that one, the hacking through your system is reduced. You can't stop it, but you can make it harder for them to hack anything you've got. But if you know you've been hacked, you need to there's an incident response clause. Maintenance of your network, media protection. Do you protect, if you send out if you have cell phones, if you have all sorts of devices, are you protecting those devices and those devices will have in them the CUI, the different categories of information, then they're going to want to make sure that you protect them. There's personal security, there's physical protection, there's risk assessment. Under physical protection, we've had clients that manufacture a product, and what they've done when it comes to a solicitation that is covered, say by CUI, they will set up a separate computer, laptop that meets these qualifications, but only certain people can use it. And then you use that laptop for the CUI information that you're bidding on. I've even seen them set up separate rooms in their manufacturing facility that are fenced in, nobody can get into it. But they want to make sure that any of those categories of information that you downloaded or in the process of communicating with the agency themselves, that you do it in a protected manner. Security assessment, systems and communications, and then of course systems and information integrity. So those are the families of control. And these are the areas that the federal government, the DoD, is very concerned about. And they would expect you as a contractor to comply with these areas. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into some of the families of control. So access, like control 3.1, access is the ability to make use of any system resources. You know, does the company use passwords? Does the company have an authentication mechanism? I think a lot of you have seen now that where, you know, if you want to access a website, say your bank, and you have and you go through the internet to access the bank account, they're going to send you through text or email a code, and that code, then you enter that code into the system you're trying to access, and then that gives you access. So some of you, I'm sure you're now beginning to see, you know, what the authentication mechanisms look like. Do applications used to remotely access the system use approved encryption methods? So, you know, it's all about encrypting the information from you, say, over the internet that has encrypted. So it makes it, and you're sending it directly to a contracting officer, and it falls within the 3 categories of information. So that deals with access control. The next one is awareness and training. You know, is basic security awareness training provided to all systems users before utilizing the process? Do all users, managers, and systems administrators receive initial and annual training on what those roles are? So they're very concerned that you're training your employees. Some of you may have heard the story where most of the malware or hacking comes when an employee clicks on an email that they shouldn't click on. So you want to make sure that you're training your employees enough to where they can say, oh, I don't know who sent that email. I'm going to ignore it. So these are the things that they deal with in awareness and training. Audit and accountability. An audit is independent review and examination of records. So as most of you know, when you're doing federal contracting, and depending, of course, on the size of the contract, you are subject to audits. So you always want to make sure that I've always recommended that if you have an accounting system and you're, you know, invoicing, tracking, you know, the paperwork that's going back and forth, that you make sure that you assign government communications in a separate number. If you're using QuickBooks, you know, it's all about debits and credits. And so you want to make sure that any of your government accounting issues have a separate account number, or at least category of account number, so that if you are audited, you can easily pull up the information under the particular code you've assigned that file to, or whatever. So that's in the audits. Can a company uniquely trace and hold accountable users responsible for unauthorized actions? Does a company review and update audited events annually and/or events substantial systems changes or as needed? Does the system maintain audit records? So this is under the audit and accountability section, family of control. The next one deals with configuration management. You know, our baseline configurations developed. Here we kind of get into more of the technical aspects of your system. And it's, if you're lucky to have a in-house computer expert, this is where they need to pay attention. And if you're using a managed service, you want to make sure that that managed service that you're utilizing, let's say Microsoft 365, where you can log in and get access to all of their software products, and you pay a monthly fee, then you want to make sure that that managed service is also compliant, or helps you become compliant in all of these families of control. Identification and authentication: do all passwords follow best practices, at least 12 characters, and require a mix of upper and lower levels? I tell you, passwords for me are difficult. And so what I've, because it looks like everything I go to on the internet of substance requires a password. So be careful about where you store those passwords. A lot of people will use a software that you can subscribe to. You put all your passwords in there. Well, that seems to defeat the purpose to me, because if that system gets hacked, then they'll know all the people that use that system, they'll know all of their passwords. So that's not a good thing, but there are people that do it, and supposedly they're hack proof, they say. But at least write them down on a sheet of paper and figure out some way that you can, once you write it down, then you go hide it somewhere. You know, I mean, here you're relying on a sheet of paper to have all your password. So whatever system you got that makes you feel comfortable, I would definitely utilize it. Incident responses is the company incident response policy, which specifically outlines requirements for handling incidents involving, say, CUI. Is cybersecurity incident information properly reported to company management and our authorities? The next one talks about maintenance. Once again, here's where you go. You have your computer people conduct these maintenances, and that they keep them up to date. The next one is media protection. Do only approved individuals have access to media from the CUI system? Are all CUI data on media encrypted and physically locked prior to transport outside of company secure locations? Are all CUI systems identified with an asset control identifier? For example, does each company's laptop have an asset ID? Coming out of the university system, UTA, each laptop I had an inventory number on it. So if you manage a few people, 4 or 5 people, and they have access to your systems, you want to make sure that they're, you know, if you can afford it, you want to give them a company supplied laptop. So basically you control that laptop. And assign an inventory number to that one. Next one is personal security. Are individuals requiring access screened before access is granted? Or electronic and physical access permissions reviewed when employees are resigned or reassigned or transferred? Does the company disable information systems prior to an employee's termination? Real important that, you know, if you hire somebody and they decide that they're leaving or transferred, or they've been reassigned, that you delete their password access, and then once they're settled in the new division or function that they're in, then you reassign a new one. I have seen companies that would prohibit their employees from having their iPhone on during work. And that's, you know, depending on the level of security that they have to maintain, it sounds kind of draconian, but it makes sense if they're in compliance with cybersecurity. Physical protection. Are all visitors to sensitive areas always escorted by an authorized employee? Some of you may go into a large company and they want you to sign in. That's a form of physical protection. Or keys, combinations, and other physical devices, access devices secured. And are all logs of physical access to sensitive areas maintained per retention policy? Yeah, I think IRS has policies on how long you can keep paperwork, especially government paperwork or tax information. And so you want to make sure you're following those retention policies. Risk assessment. Does a company have a risk management policy? Is vulnerable scanning performed? Vulnerability scanning. You can hire a company that'll go in and scan your systems and then give you feedback on where the weaknesses are, especially on the technical side, the wires, the routers, everything mechanically it takes to run your system. Security assessment. Has a periodic security assessment been conducted to ensure security controls are implemented? Is the assessment conducted by an individual independent security auditor or consultant? Under systems and communications, this section, there's 35 questions, by the way, on the self-assessment related to systems, to this family of control. Are processes and automated mechanisms used to provide encryption of CUI during transmission? A lot of things. One of the things that, and depending on the size of the contract you would get, say from the Air Force or from a federal agency, they have what's called a VPN, and they'll set up where you can communicate from your laptop directly to their servers without going through you're using the internet, but it's a protected portal. And so a lot of agencies, and like I said, after the contract's been awarded, they're going to want you to access, to be part of their, what I call virtual private network. And so the information that flows between you and them is somewhat protected. Is systems and information integrity? Does the system automatically update malicious code, code protection mechanisms? Does the company perform real-time scans of files with external sources as the files are downloaded and opened? So what we talked about is go back. So what we've talked about is the controls that families of control, and these are the areas that auditors and contracting officers will be looking at to see if your computer system or your network complies with these regulations. Now, let's say you're just, you're one or two people and you have a laptop. You don't have a network. You utilize the laptop. You have an email that's provided by another source like Gmail or something, AT&T. You can still, the government is still going to require that device that you're using meet their specifications. So for a 1-2 person shop, it's not as expensive or as draconian as it would be if you have 20, 30 or more employees. And so that's something that, that you just have to weigh out and see, if it's cost effective. Now, compliance steps, okay? So the very first thing that you have to do is a self-assessment, all right? It's a questionnaire It's about 110 questions. Those questions are related to the families of control. And you ask, you say yes, or you say no, or you have two other options that basically, or another option that says we're working on. That's a self-assessment. Now, you can access the self-assessment. The Apex Accelerator has taken, I know we did this, we took those self-assessment questions, and we put them on a file, an Excel file. So each question is listed, your answers, and then a score will come up that shows where you are, how you've answered those 110 questions. And so, so you can access that free of charge. Apex, has it. There's other companies that you can access the assessment file, so you can very quickly go through those 110 questions and then know what your score is. Now, at this point, there's no right or wrong score. What they want you to do is to upload that score, and we'll talk about where to send it, to their database so that they have a record as to what, how your systems, how the assessment of your system was at the time you conducted it. The other thing then is called a plan of action and POAMs, or milestones. This is where you take the areas of the assessment that you're weak on, you lay them out, say on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and you say, okay, here's the number one problem, and you say, it'll want to know who have you assigned that problem to solve, what date do you expect them to have that solution in place, and of course who the contact people are. So so that's your plan of action. So they want to know where you are assessment wise, but they also want to know what are you doing to make the corrections that you were solving the weaknesses that the assessment revealed. The next one is a system security plan. And that's a little more detailed document. We have, you might want to, depending on your size, you might want to hire an outside IT company. The Apex doesn't do the system security plan, but the group that they report to, called TMAC, Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center, they will assist you in the development of your system security plan. They do charge for it. So when you're ready to tackle that plan, then you might want to bring in an outside source to help guide you through the process. The next step is incident response plan and reporting. So you always want to have that as part of your policies, that if this happens, then you need to do this. And if this happens, then you need to report it up the line. If you think the system's been hacked and you have records to indicate that you had an intruder from the outside, then you need to let people know that's happened. You need to definitely let your management ownership of the company know. And in turn, they're responsible for letting the contracting officer know that you've been hacked. And once again, they're going to want to know, what did they take? What did they look at? And then you need to tell them, be able to explain to them what your remedies are to not keep it from keep it from happening, but make it harder for them to do it. There is no foolproof system when it comes to hacking and or intruding on somebody else's network. It's like a submarine, and if you notice, if you've watched the submarine TV show or movie, that you notice that this 300-yard submarine has different bulkheads. They have different sections. So if one of the sections floods, they can cut it off immediately and deal with that, and it doesn't affect the rest of the submarine. You want your system security plan. You want to look at it from a point of view. Okay, they can only go so far. If they come through the internet, and it comes through an email that somebody opened up, then you want to contain it, and you don't want it to filter through to the rest of your network. I've seen in machine shops where the operators, they're called CMMC, I'm sorry, where they operate a machine that builds a part. And that part then is what's sold, say, to the Defense Department for a weapons system. That machine is networked into your network and to the internet. So one time, a machine operator started the machine. It had all the plans, the software in it, knew what it needed to do. And then he started to look at his social media network. And so he was accessing his LinkedIn or anything on the side. Somebody saw that and then went through their social media network and got into the machine. And from the machine, the data in the machine, they were then had a path into the company's network. So they could look at your accounting system, your billing, all sorts of different things. And then they tried to look at the company's competitors. Now, if you're dealing with Lockheed Martin, the top tier aerospace companies, or you're a subcontractor to them, they're going to catch it pretty quickly that there's an intruder coming through your system into theirs. So, be careful about employees' use of social networks while they're at work and while they are working on the classification documents that we discussed earlier. And then the last thing, of course, is subcontractor flow down requirements. So whatever requirements you have, you're the prime contractor, right? And so you have subcontractors that are helping you make this product or service. So it's up to you, it's your responsibility to flow down these requirements, these compliance steps to each of your subcontractors, because they have to be held responsible, accountability, that their systems likewise are as secure as possible. So you have 5 steps. The first one, of course, is taking the self-assessment. The next one is taking the scores, the areas of weakness that the assessment identified, and write out a plan of action of how you're going to correct those. So if 110 questions and half of them, over 50 of them, are areas that need to be approved, they would expect you to write that down on a sheet of paper and form a plan of action and let them know what's in that plan of action. We talked about system security plan, incident response plan and reporting, and subcontractor flow down requirements. So if you're a subcontractor, especially to one of the major aerospace companies in this area, they're going to want you to be in compliance at some stage with these cybersecurity requirements. All right. These are just some areas that that we have laid out where you can definitely, like Project Spectrum has a self-assessment that you can access for free. And then of course, Cross Timbers has an Excel file where you can access that at no charge. Now, once you have done all of these things, and it's a maturation process, so you can't get it all done at one time. All right. But you have to, whatever the situation is at the time that you've done the assessment, you have to upload that score to the SPRS system. And that is the web page for that. So contracting officers can go to this software or this database and see what to the level that you are in compliance. To get to the SPARS, you have to be registered in PIE, P-I-E-E, and then once you've done the registration there, then you have access to upload your scores, your cybersecurity plan, all the different things that they're required. So it sits there for contracting people to review either, and they'll probably do the review if they decide to do business with you, then they're going, and it's a real critical thing, then they're going to give you some time to update your SPARS database. Usually it's about, I've heard about 30 days before they actually award you the contract. This is what a plan of action milestones may look like, the form itself. You know, the POAM ID, the creation date, weakness description, security level, point of contact, schedule of completion date, and so on. So this is a good form to use to let contracting people know this is my plan of action to deal with to improve on the areas that we're weak on. The system security plan template. This website contains, let me see if I can go to it. I probably messed myself up. Sorry about that. Tried to be smart in the, I need to get back to where. There you go. So this web page has a system security plan. I have seen system security plan templates, once they're filled out, 500 pages. It's very detailed. And of course, it's a very large company. Most small businesses aren't, the system security plan is what it is based on what you have. So don't feel, well, I have to have a big security system or network to do this. No, you just fill it out. It's kind of an assessment of the time that you're in. Situational assessment. How's that? And I think contracting officers, if you do one on day one, they're going to expect you maybe 60 days down the line to update those areas, especially where you identified as weaknesses. Incident response plan, you have 72 hours. Once the discovery's been made, and then that information is uploaded to DIBnet. Contractors must have a minimum assurance public key infrastructure certificate to report. It can take up to 45 days to obtain. And you would go to that site to get the public key infrastructure. Contact the Department of Defense Cyber Crime Center for an incident collection form. So as you identify these incidents, you want to document them, and then you want to upload them to this site. Subcontractor flow down requirements. You need, if you have a contract with your subs, then you need to insert that requirement into the contract. So they're held the same standards you are, either by the agency if you're a prime, or if you are a sub to a larger prime, they would expect you to flow down those requirements to your subs. I've seen some supply chains that are maybe 7 deep. And so each one of those different companies have to have in play their compliance to cybersecurity rules. Now, a little bit about the system maturation model. I see we have some questions, so let me go through this slide, and then we'll try and answer any questions that you might have. Just to give you an update, as of August 15th, the DoD published a proposed rule to implement the clauses to propose CMMC program. And so it's been out since August 15th. Usually it's about a 60 days, depending on, they may extend it a little longer than that. They would, I think it's still out for comment, but if you get a chance to read it, that'll give you an idea of what the CMMC model demands and what auditors will be looking at if they come into your business to see what level of compliance that you're at. CMMC program is designed to verify protection of sensitive, unclassified information between DoD and its contractor. I said earlier that an auditor will come in and assign a number of level of compliance, 1, 2, or 3. And then once the CMMC rule goes into play, contracting officers will then assign 1, 2, or 3 security levels to the solicitation, which is something different. We haven't seen that before. So if you are a level 1, then you'll only be able to bid on those solicitations that are designated as level 1. Same thing for 2 and 3. Senior officials with prime or subcontractors will be required to annually affirm company compliance. Now, all of this, for sure, the False Claims Act is in play. It covers this. If you say you're in compliance, but they find out you aren't, you will be, the DOJ will find you. I heard a story this week where a very large prime contractor, Raytheon, let one of their employees that's working, in a high security area, has a Russian girlfriend, and that was not disclosed to the company. And he decided to go visit her in Russia, and he took the company's laptop. And it had everything on it in that laptop. Well, once DoD found out about it, the Department of Justice came in and fined them $2 million. So they're very serious about securing the information for national security purposes. So it's not a game. Just as it comes, just make sure that you take it seriously and you do what you can do. Which also leads back to the process of, is this worthwhile? Is there a return on your investment? Well, to a certain degree, there is, because if you have 8 or 9 competitors that you're dealing with, and you're the only one or the only 2 of those competitors that is even anywhere in this cybersecurity thing, more than likely the contracting officer is going to want to do business with you compared with the companies that aren't. So we've seen an uptick in those companies that have complied or in the process of complying. They're getting more and more business because the contracting people feel that that it's secure, their interactions with them. So every DoD contract over 10,000 except COTS. So, and basically COTS are commercially off-the-shelf items or systems. Let's say you're a reseller for one of Microsoft's software, and so you don't touch it, you just resell it. So that would be considered COTS, as opposed to having DoD or contract with you to build a whole new system for them. But these are some of the things that that there'll be dollar values, COTS. If you're a distributor of an item, then you'll probably be a level 1. If you're a manufacturer of an item, you'll be a level 2. And if you're a manufacturer that's doing top security stuff, then, like they do in the aerospace companies, then you'll be a level 3. And by the time you get to level 3, you comply with a bunch of things. The ITAR, a lot of different things that the government requires their contractors to do. The annual certification by senior company officials. So they're going to want you to, if you're the owner of the company, president, CEO, to affirm that your company is in compliance. And once again, if you get audited and the company's not in compliance, and that officer that signed that affirmation document is in a little trouble. And then effective beginning the 25th. Okay, so looks like all responses to the proposed rule are due in by the 15th. And here I have a copy of what how to get access to that rule. This is just some other things about CMMC. I know a lot of people think CMMC is not a rule yet. It's good to know what's coming down the pike. It's good to know, what the expectations will be, say in about 8 months. But right now, the only rule that applies is the compliance steps that we covered. So that's about it in terms of a high-level review of cybersecurity compliance. And it's going to cost you money. And so you're going to have to decide. I think I've heard prices from consultants that have certification. DoD set up a certification program for IT companies or IT consultants to be certified to go into a company and to determine their level of compliance. So that's it, kind of at a high level. There are a couple of resources that at least you can utilize that don't cost you anything, and doing that self-assessment. But when it comes to the system security plan, it's probably best to have somebody that knows your system fill that out. And then, of course, the owners of the company will be held responsible for it. All right. So I know we talked about a lot of different things. I hope it, sometimes it glosses over people's eyes when they start to think about this and look at the compliance area. And you just have to take it slow. You have to take it deliberately and understand that it doesn't happen overnight. But also you have to decide, is it worth the expense for you to do this? So anyway, we're open up for questions if anybody's got some. I see there's at least 2 in the chat.
I was just checking. I didn't see anything in the chat.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anybody wants to discuss this, unmute it. Please bring it up. You can unmute your mics and we can talk about it.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. James. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you. This is very insightful. For me, although I'm not pursuing federal contracts at this time, I'm thinking that for both federal and for just regular contracts, this day and age, I think it's just helpful to be on the front end of this.
Yes.
And to become compliant now or figure out the path to becoming compliant. So
right.
This was very insightful for me. I think it just opened up a lot. So I'm sure I'll have more questions.
Oh yeah.
But
feel free to go through the SBDC and I'll be glad to answer them for you. It's you know, it's cost of doing business.
It is,
I
and I think it's needed. I do have a quick question now that
sure.
now that I've spoken. Do you know of any companies that might provide like this type of service in terms of like managing the security for a small business? Do you know of any companies that perhaps do that? Because I'm thinking that, you know, we have to have all of these protections in place and right. And, if certain things happen, we have to remediate at a certain time. We have to notify them within a certain time.
Right.
But do we know, are there any companies out there that might provide like a service that could do this on behalf of a company that we could like
Yeah, there
contract
are.
the
There-
responsibility out to?
yeah, there are. And what I would there's one good company that called DTC, and
DTC.
they're DTC, and they put on some webinars with the Apex Accelerator, and then they're consultants, and they'll go into a company and kind of give them an overview of what's needed, and then they'll give you a statement of work, and then you can decide, is this the route you want to go, and how fast you want to go with this. TMAC, now these are private companies, right? So they're going to charge you a lot. TMAC,
Mhm.
UTA, they have their rates are subsidized by the contract that they have with the Department of Commerce, so they aren't quite as expensive. And Daryl Tippy is their he handles that practice for them. So he's a good resource, and you just want to find out who those companies are, and
Okay.
and then he may come out and just do an assessment of where you're at, and then let you know, okay, if you want to do this, these are the steps that you'll have to go through. And then, of course, they'll have an hourly rate. And sometimes, depending on your NAICS code, the state of Texas has money available to defray to lower their hourly rate. So they got that grant from the governor's office, as well as the grant that they've been operating under from Department of Commerce for over 20, 30 years. So yeah, hope that helps a little
Okay.
bit,
No, that's
and
very helpful. Thank you.
you're welcome. Anybody else have any comments? If you're a startup and you're looking to, which is a good idea to be aware of all the different things that you'll need to be aware of. Sometimes it's good to be a subcontractor to a larger company. And that way you learn what they're doing, how they're complying. And then when you're ready to go solo as a prime itself, then that's a good learning step for you. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Okay. I just put a quick note in the chat. If you would like a copy of this presentation, just email me at sbdchealth@Dallas College, and I will forward you a copy of the presentation, as well as a copy of the video. We're recording it, and it will be uploaded soon. So again, just send me a quick email. Let me know that you would like a copy of it. And that's all that I have for now.
I think, yeah, that's all I can see too. So, hey, I want to thank you guys for coming. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have. And best of luck to you all. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.